Welcome into the Husker247 postgame podcast. We have a litany of technical issues as Bruntz is trying to do this from Indiana's football stadium, and the Wi-Fi is not working great, but we'll see if we have him. Michael Bruntz, are you here with us?
Yes, can you hear me? Am I
We
here?
can hear you. The lag on the video is going to be quite something. I don't know if this one's going to make it to YouTube. I don't know if this one's going to make it to post production. I don't know if it needs to make it to post production. I don't know if Nebraska did anything for 2 weeks during the bye week. Michael Bruntz, quick thoughts: 56-7, Indiana. I don't know, what's your favorite word when a team gets their ass kicked and you got to write about it? Is it rout? Is it shellacked? Is it blowout? What do you go with?
Yeah, I don't know. Murder would not have been too strong. Um, no, I'm just a domination on in all three phases. And I mean, Matt Rule is I believe him when he says that he didn't see this coming. I did not expect Nebraska to not compete. Um, that was the surprising part of it to me. And I think this game kind of laid bare some issues that have kind of been bubbling under the surface a little bit since basically like Illinois, I think is fair to say. And Matt Rule's talked about having to play whack-a-mole at times with issues that are popping up, and that was in the context of special teams. But it feels like there's a lot of moles on this team right now, and probably the worst possible week that it could happen going into a road game at Ohio State next week. So where do you want to start?
I want to save the offense because I'm far more concerned about that side of the ball than I am defensively. I don't want to talk about special teams at all. I don't see a reason to. Uh,
They didn't do
they're
much. I mean,
terrible.
they dropped some kicks and
But
they
they didn't
stepped
do
out of the
much as a
chute.
perfect summation of it.
But yeah, I mean, Indiana didn't punt until the fourth quarter, so that's your lead into talking about the defense.
Yeah. So let's talk about this defense. I came in expecting that Nebraska's defensive line could be the best unit on the field, and good Lord, could I not have been more wrong. They really didn't show up most of that game. And it started right from the beginning where very little pressure on Curtis Rourke and a couple of his dropbacks, very few hands even grabbing the running back or slowing things down in the rushing lanes. I want to start with the defensive line runs. How did I get that one so wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was going to need to be a game that Nebraska wanted to play that game in a phone booth if they could. And Indiana really wanted that game to be outside the hashes, spread them out, get the RPO stuff going. And Indiana won the battle of tempo. When Nebraska was not able to shut down or at least limit Indiana's running game, that was kind of curtains, I think. And if a team lines up and is able to just crank the ball, what did they finish 6.5 a carry, 6.5 a carry,
Yeah, it was up to
five
nine and a
touchdowns.
half at one point.
Yeah. If you're able to kind of pull from both decks, if you're a play caller at Indiana, Nebraska was in trouble. And the thing that was tough in that game too was Nebraska at no point tackled particularly well in that game, but especially early. They had some chances to get off the field in those first couple drives and set the tone a little bit, and didn't do it. And when you kind of looked into what Nebraska's numbers were coming into this game, they'd done a really nice job of limiting big plays. Um, and obviously, Indiana got their big plays. They got them on the ground, they got them through the air. And the one thing that happened that I was a little bit surprised by was I did not think that Nebraska's veteran defense handled those, didn't kind of go to the next play. It felt like, when they break off a 43-yard run on the first possession on 3rd and 1, Nebraska never recovered from that. And it kind of felt inevitable at that point that they were going to punch the ball in. So just defensively, just a out of sorts game. And I think you do have to give a lot of credit to Curtis Rourke. I mean, he made a
Ton of
couple of
credit.
really, really good throws in that game, in the deep vertical passing game. So, yeah, I mean, if you're Nebraska, defensively, I mean, you just got to kind of go home with your tail between your legs a little bit because, I mean, aside from Mekhi Bayer's sack on 4th down on the second possession, there's not a ton that you probably hang your hat on of good from that game that you can kind of carry forward.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it and some of the things that I wrote. There were 6 total incompletions. 2 of them were straight drops by Indiana. One was an interception on a Hail Mary pass right before the half. One of the other incompletions came from a non-quarterback throwing it on a trick play in the second half by Indiana that really should have been intercepted by Nebraska, but I believe John Bullock broke it up before Mario Buford had the opportunity to intercept it. Just a really bad game all the way around. It never felt like at any point Nebraska was comfortable on the defensive side of the field. Early in the game, you get that holding call, a rarity in the Big Ten for Nebraska. You get a 1st and 20, and the very first play, they're right back to 2nd and 11.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so much space at times between Nebraska's defensive backs and the Indiana receivers that they didn't even have to run RPO. They just take the snap, throw it out to them right away, get 8-9 yards. Like it is hard to explain how different these two teams looked offensively from each other, just comparing how plodding and slow and bad Nebraska looked offensively and how hard every yard it was to scrape together. And then you have Indiana over here that just looks like they're just on a speed track, just running for yards after yards after yards on every play. And you're right. I mean, Nebraska wasn't able to turn the page from some of the big plays. Nebraska couldn't make simple plays. Nebraska didn't really put them in a lot of bad situations. And then when they had them in situations to get off the field, they couldn't do it. They did it one time with Mekhi Bayer, and roughly that was about it. I will say this. Obviously, Ohio State coming up, that's not going to bode well for where Nebraska's at as a program right now coming off of this loss. I don't worry so much about the defense over the final 5 games. I think they've got veteran guys. I think they'll pick themselves up. We saw them pick themselves up against Michigan last year. I think it takes a sort of a unique set on offense to be able to attack them the way that Indiana did. Illinois didn't do anything like what we saw Indiana do. I mean, this was just straight carnage. At least against Illinois, there's large stretches of the game where Nebraska's defense played adequate to good. Today, it was just all bad, and it never really got better. They could never really pick themselves off the mat.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska was going to have to take something away from Indiana today on defense. Like you had to limit the passing game, or you had to be able to get some stuff done up front and against the run, and they didn't. And you know, I think what you also saw too was the benefit of a 6th-year transfer quarterback. You know, I mean, I don't think that Curtis Rourke looked flustered at all in that game. A number of his throws in the first half were 3rd, 4th reads. I mean, it was dumping to the flat to the running back. It was dumping to the guy underneath, and he never really put the ball in a bad spot. I mean, the entire time he was in there. I mean, I mean, he was out of the game at halftime. I mean, because of the hand injury. But I mean,
that was the only thing Nebraska took away. They took away one of his fingers.
It felt like Indiana could have named their number if he would have stayed in there. And you know, I think coming into this game, we talked about, we're going to find out how good, Nebraska's defense is or how good Indiana's offense is. I mean, I think you probably have to leave this game thinking that Indiana's got a decent offense that they can. They're going to do that to a lot of teams this year. Already have. I think they have the potential to do it to some teams on the back half of their schedule too.
Yeah, I mean, the Ohio State game stands out because outside of that, there's not a lot of opposition that has the firepower on offense or has a stout defense to go with it. And so, Indiana's got a very clear pathway to a really TCU-esque type season for them. Nebraska's pathway to just get to a 6 win suddenly has a lot of doubt cast over it. You have UCLA winning earlier today. You have Wisconsin playing well as of late. That leads me to the next part of this. Nebraska's offense, good God, what happened? They've scored 42 points since the last touchdown in the Illinois game. They had 21 offensive points against Purdue in the second half, 14 offensive points in the first half against Rutgers, and 7 points today against Indiana. The second half of multiple games this year has been bad. I don't know that it mattered a whole lot today, but it was a struggle every yard for them to move the ball today. I believe Dylan Raiola threw the ball 44 times, and he had like 224 yards passing. That's terrible.
234, yeah.
Like that's terrible. It felt like they were just checking down on everything. They couldn't get any wins from their wide receivers on the outside. Indiana was largely playing in quarters coverage, and Nebraska couldn't do anything with it. The offense has regressed to a point where it looks, dare I say it, as bad as it ever did last year, too. And maybe that's just how Indiana was able to jump on Nebraska, and it won't look like that, etc. But for at least the last two games, both going into the bye and now coming out of the bye, it's not just injuries or needing to get healthy. The offense is bad. They don't really have a lot of answers or a lot of things they can do. They can't run the football. They have to dress up a running game, and they still can't do anything with it. They're now trying to a screen game to replace the running game, and they don't have the blocking or the capability to do that. No one can break a tackle. Thomas Fidone could have had a touchdown today if he could just slip out of a shoelace tackle in the second half. Couldn't do it. Multiple other guys could have had bigger plays. Couldn't do it. There's a lot of concern with what this offense is going to be capable of doing going forward. Or I shouldn't say there's a lot of concern. I have a lot of concern with what this offense can do going forward.
No, I thought Matt Rule was actually pretty succinct in his kind of lay of the land of the offense after the game. I would expect we'll get a little bit more from him on Monday, but what you said about how it felt like every yard is so difficult. I think that's kind of where they're at right now as an offense, and part of that is you don't have anything that you can really lean on right now. I mean, you ran for
70 yards.
70 yards. Sorry, I'm just looking at my little sheet here.
29 carries.
It turned into a passing game early on, but still, you weren't really able to do much early on. It's concerning, and he kind of highlighted this, that Indiana throws a short pass to the outside and it goes for 20. Nebraska throws that same pass right now and it's being tackled for no gain or 2 yards or something like that. There's just not anything right now that if you're a Nebraska coach and you say, we need to get 4 yards or we need to get a 3rd and 8 right now. I mean, what are you going to? And that's a concern. And Dylan Raiola had to stand in there today and he took some shots and tried to fit some balls in where they didn't go and made some bad decisions. I mean, the last couple games, it seems like he's kind of gone the way that the offense has, or the offense has gone the way that he has, basically since that pick against Rutgers. Nothing has looked in rhythm. And I agree. I mean, it felt at times today a little bit like last season, where you're like, what are we going to go to right now to move the ball and score points? And right now you look at what's left on Nebraska's schedule. There's not a lot of games that you're probably going to win 14-7. Like, you're going to have to score points. You're going to have to play complementary football with your defense. And that's the concern right now, is it's just, you're past the midpoint of the season, you're 7 games into this thing, and you still look like you're searching for offensive identity. That's where I'm at right now. That's a scary place to be at this point in the season if you don't know who you are and you don't have anything that you can really hang your hat on.
Beyond identity, you're just looking for somebody who can make a play on the offensive side of the ball. You have Jamal Banks can't make a catch in the back of the end zone, and all of this doesn't matter. You're out of the game, but like they couldn't do the easy stuff. You have Matt Rule pontificating on why Indiana is able to get 20 yards on that play. Well, here's a big difference. Indiana's challenging you at the line of scrimmage because they know you can't run the ball and your wide receivers aren't getting open down the field. So they don't have to give the 10-yard cushion that Nebraska's defensive backs are given. And on top of it, you can't get a single block from a wide receiver against a defensive back in any of these plays in space. Or if you do get one, the wide receiver catching the ball runs straight into the lane of which he's, getting blocked open for. It's just it's really poor. I mean, it was one of the worst performances that I can truly recall in a while. I think I sent you a text during the game asking when the last time we saw anything like this was. I suggested the last 2 Michigan games. It's pretty much what comes to mind, but they had a bye week going into this game. This is the result of it. I mean, that is truly concerning. I don't have answers. I don't think they have answers. And the best part for them is they get Ohio State next. And that's not going to come with answers either.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. And, in some ways you came in here thinking you'd have a chance to knock off a ranked team or play competitively. I mean, to me, it feels I was walking off the field today, and it was funny, not funny. I mean, it was noteworthy to me that by the time you were in the middle of the fourth quarter, I mean, the stands had largely cleared out. I mean, people had gone about their day and were doing other things here in Bloomington. That's just kind of, what kind of game it was. And, I think the concern is you would, I think I texted you back that the Michigan game last year felt like this, but the numbers for this game were worse than that Michigan game. I mean, at one point, Indiana was averaging 9.1 yards a play with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And, you would kind of hoped, I guess, that as a program that you were past these kinds of games. I mean, these games are familiar. They feel we lived through these games under previous coaching staffs, and you would kind of hope that at this point we were past that. I mean, maybe this is a turning point. You find something, you do things differently, but for kind of having that nice division point and going into the second half of the season, you'd hope that you'd come on the road and play well, and that definitely did not happen. So it's a little bit of soul searching time right now. You got to find some things that you can do to make this thing go, especially on offense. I mean, I think I'm with you. I think that's the bigger concern for me is that it feels so disjointed on offense right now, and that's a scary place to be in Game 7.
No doubt about it. All right, we will let Bruntz get out of there with the bad Wi-Fi. I appreciate everyone sticking with us with the technical issues that we had kind of throughout this podcast today. We'll be back with more podcast content. Of course, the Sunday side session will happen tomorrow morning. I'll be talking with Josh Peterson of 1620 The Zone. We'll go through this game a little bit more in depth and get his thoughts on where everything sits and get you all ready and prepared for Ohio State coming up this week. Nebraska goes into Columbus, back on the road against another ranked team and another really good offense and defense with the Buckeyes. But, of course, you can check out all the coverage, everything Matt Rule said, some of the answers, some of the stuff they're going to try to do. You can find all that at Husker247.com. So be sure to check that out. For Michael Bruntz, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker247. We'll catch you next time.